The howl tore through the icy dawn like a blade. Thor was cornered against a snow-covered ravine, surrounded by 5 pairs of yellow eyes glowing in the darkness. The German shepherd trembled, not only from the biting cold of the Rocky Mountains, but from the absolute terror of being face to face with a pack of black wolves. His owners had left 3 days earlier, abandoning him after an accident on the trail. Now, lost and starving, he faced his wild cousins. The pack leader advanced. Her black fur absorbed the moonlight like a bottomless hole. Thor lowered his head until it touched the snow, exposing his neck in total submission. Every canine instinct screamed inside him. This was not a fight. It was complete surrender. The she-wolf, whom the forest rangers called Shadow, stopped just inches from his muzzle. She sniffed deeply. Thor closed his eyes, waiting for the fangs. But they never came. Instead, he felt something impossible, the gentle touch of a nose against his own. When he opened his eyes, Shadow was watching him with an intensity he had never seen in any animal. There was no fury there. There was curiosity. Recognition. Something changed in that instant, something that defied all the laws of nature that separated the domestic from the wild. The pack stepped back, forming a semicircle. Shadow growled low, but not at Thor. It was a command to the others. The gray male to her right, Iron, bared his teeth in disapproval. A young female, Snow, tilted her head in confusion. Thor remained motionless, barely daring to breathe. His heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo through the mountains. Then Shadow did something extraordinary. She turned and began to walk up the mountain. She stopped, looked back, and waited. Thor understood the impossible invitation. He staggered on weak legs, each step a gamble with death. But something greater than fear pushed him forward. Maybe it was ancestral instinct. Maybe desperation. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something no one had ever witnessed. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. The first days were a silent hell. Thor followed the pack at a safe distance, always the last, always watched. Iron did not hide his hostility. The gray wolf growled every time Thor came near the food, shoving him with his shoulder until he backed away. At night, while the pack slept huddled together to share warmth, Thor shivered alone meters away, watching that circle of protection that was denied to him. Shadow watched everything in silence. Her yellow eyes followed every interaction, every movement. Thor did not understand why she had brought him along if it was only for him to suffer. Hunger gnawed at his insides. His muscles, accustomed to kibble and light walks, screamed with exhaustion. He was a stranger in a world that had never been made for him. On the 5th night, the pack hunted an elk. Thor watched from afar as they worked in perfect synchrony. Iron and Wind, another male, circled the prey from the left. Snow and Gray attacked from the right. Shadow waited for the exact moment, then leapt straight for the throat. The elk fell with a dull thud. The pack fed according to a rigid hierarchy. Shadow first. Then Iron. Then the others. Thor waited until there was almost nothing left, just bones and cartilage. But while gnawing on a hard bone, something strange happened. Snow approached. The young she-wolf was different from the others, her movements curious rather than threatening. She sat beside him, not too close, but close enough. She began licking her own paws, ignoring him completely. Or pretending to ignore him. Thor realized it was a test. He kept gnawing, trying not to show nervousness. When Snow stood up to leave, she nudged a piece of meat toward him with her muzzle. It wasn't much, but it was real food. Then she did something that froze Thor's heart. She looked directly at Shadow, who was watching everything from atop a rock. The leader did not move, did not growl. She only watched. And in that heavy silence, Thor understood, this too was a test. The following weeks transformed Thor in ways he had never imagined possible. He woke before dawn, watching every movement of the pack. He learned to read the subtle signals, the tilt of an ear, the position of a tail, the weight of a gaze. When Iron growled, Thor instantly threw himself belly up. When Shadow howled, he howled along, his canine voice strangely harmonious with the wild sounds. But something different was happening. Something not even the pack itself had noticed yet. During a hunt, Thor noticed a pattern. The wolves always attacked in the same formation, predictable to experienced prey. He began positioning himself on the opposite side, not to hunt, but to block escape routes. At first it was accidental, then intentional. A startled deer ran straight into Wind's jaws. The pack ate well that night. Shadow watched him differently after that. Thor felt the change before he saw it. The following night, when the pack huddled together to sleep, no one drove him away. Snow pressed against his flank. Gray rested his head on his hind legs. The shared warmth was more than physical. It was acceptance. Iron, however, stiffened. The gray wolf began openly challenging Shadow, something unthinkable before. He growled when she distributed food. He marked territory over her markings. Thor realized what the others still did not see. Iron did not hate him for being different. He hated him because Thor was changing the established order, and in that new order, there was less space for old methods. The tension exploded on a freezing afternoon. Iron lunged at Thor without warning, 20 kilos of muscle and fury. Thor did not run. Something inside him had changed. He faced the attack, not with violence, but with something Iron did not expect. Thor dropped to the side, exposing his throat, but kept his eyes locked on the wolf. Submission with dignity. Respect without fear. Iron stopped, confused. That was neither prey behavior nor that of a rival. It was something entirely new. Winter arrived with murderous fury. The most violent snowstorm in decades swept through the mountains, turning the world into a deadly white desert. The pack took shelter in a narrow cave, bodies pressed against one another. But the food ran out. 3 days without hunting. 4. 5. The wolves began to weaken, their bodies burning reserves that did not exist. Shadow made a desperate decision. They needed to hunt or they would die. They went out into the blinding blizzard, every step a battle against the cutting wind. Thor could barely see beyond his own muzzle. Then he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Iron had separated from the group, following a trail alone. The pack was fragmenting at the worst possible moment. Suddenly, a sound tore through the air. It was not the wind. It was a scream of pain. Thor ran before even thinking, following the sound through the white fog. He found Iron trapped in a hunter's snare, his hind leg crushed between metal jaws. The gray wolf was panicking, tearing at his own flesh trying to free himself. His eyes met Thor's, and for the first time, there was no hatred there. Only pure terror. Thor could have left. Let his antagonist die. But that never crossed his mind. He grabbed the trap with his teeth, ignoring the taste of rust and blood. He pulled with all the strength he had, muscles shaking. The trap did not give. He tried again. Nothing. Iron whimpered, a sound that broke Thor's heart. Then Thor did something extraordinary. He began to dig. The snow was deep, but he dug with desperate fury, exposing the chain that anchored the trap to the ground. He bit the chain, leveraged his entire body. Something snapped. Not the chain. His own tooth. But the chain loosened enough. Thor grabbed Iron by the scruff, dragging him free as the trap finally opened. When Shadow found the two of them, Thor was lying over Iron, sharing body heat. The gray wolf was alive. And he was crying. Spring arrived with the thaw of the mountains, bringing new life to the territory. Thor was no longer the lost and frightened German shepherd who had stumbled into that impossible encounter months earlier. His coat had thickened, his muscles hardened. But the greatest change was invisible. It was in the way Iron now hunted at his side, in the way Snow sought him out to play, in the way Shadow rested her head against his flank on cold nights. The pack had grown. 2 pups were born in the spring, and Thor became their most attentive guardian. He taught them games he had learned in his former life, blended with the wildness of his new one. The pups saw no difference between wolf and dog. To them, Thor was simply part of the family. On a clear summer day, Thor caught a familiar scent. His entire body stiffened. It was the smell of humans. His former family had returned to the mountains, searching for him. He heard familiar voices calling his name through the trees. His heart raced. For a moment, the longing almost destroyed him. Those voices represented comfort, soft kibble, gentle caresses, a warm place to sleep. Shadow appeared at his side, silent as always. She did not growl. She did not stop him. She only looked into his eyes with that deep intensity that said everything without words. The choice was his. It always had been. She had brought him to the pack, but never chained him. Thor looked toward the direction of the voices. Then he looked at Shadow. At Iron, watching from a distance. At Snow and the pups playing near the stream. Thor took 3 steps toward the human voices. Stopped. Turned. And howled. It was not the howl of a domestic dog. It was the howl of someone who had found his true home. The pack answered in chorus, their voices woven into a wild symphony that echoed through the mountains. The human voices slowly faded away. Thor watched until they disappeared completely. There was no sadness in him. Only peace. Family is not who finds you first. It is who accepts you completely. And in that pack of black wolves, a German Shepherd finally understood the meaning of belonging. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what you thought of this incredible journey.